everybody, I'm Mac Oliver from Offroad Outlaws YouTube channel, and today we're going to be installing a set of Fullflight's Elite Series A-arms on Laines 07 Yfz 450. The Elite Series are their newest addition to their line of A-arms, and they've had a few changes that we'll talk about along the way. So let's get started and get them on. So as I mentioned, there's been a few changes to the Elite Series A-arms. First thing you'll notice is the lower A-arms have been switched to a fixed self-lubricating Delrin bushing, and the ball joints on the upper and lower have been changed to an automotive style ball joint. Also, they're using a slightly smaller diameter and wall thickness tubing on these A-arms to try to save a little weight. And the reason that these were switched from Heim joints to the Delrin bushings was to just make setup a little easier. So let's get these put on. As you can see, we already have, there are no A-arms on this frame. It's a fresh build. We've done it from the ground up, sandblasted and painted the frame and built it back completely. So as you can see, I've already nicked it a little bit here. I was dry fitting the A-arms. And first thing we're going to do, just like with the Legacy series that I installed on the Raptor, and if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link to it. You can click on and check out that one as well if you're interested. But once you have your A-arm roughly in place, you're going to take your bolts and run through your frame and through the Delrin bushings here. Stick your nut on the back side. I know I always say this, but Fullflight does a fantastic job with their powder coating. Got a little paint build up in some of these holes, so you'll see sometimes as I push the bolts through, it'll push out the extra paint that's built up in those holes. And just like the ones with the Heim joints, these are very free, so they'll do excellent, allow the shocks to work like they're supposed to. So let's get the top A-arm installed. Okay, once again, the Heim joints have the zip ties to hold these little spacers on so you don't lose them. So let me grab a pair of snips real quick so I can cut those off. So now that we've cut our zip ties loose from our spacers, we're going to install these upper A-arms. Spacers. And our nut and our bolt on the back side. Had a little trash on those threads I had to wipe off. Okay, so now we have our A-arms loosely in place. And we're going to install our shock to the lower A-arm. Actually, first I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and install the ball joints to the spindle. Okay, here we're going to install our ball joint through the upper part of the spindle. Just kind of loosely attach the nut and bolt just to hold everything in place for the time being. Okay, so now we have this side, everything's roughly in place, moves really smoothly. Now I know my brake line, as you can see, it's not actually completely attached yet. I'm going to run this like it should be so that it's not kinked up or twisted or anything like that before I actually tighten everything down. Since we painted everything though, we're going to have to re-bleed the brakes and all that stuff. And if you've taken and replaced your brake lines, which if you're installing plus 2 A-arms on most four-wheelers, you're going to have to replace your brake lines with longer brake lines just so they don't kink. The stock ones are just too short in most cases. Also, you're going to need to install some extended tie rods as well. And I think that these come with the Elite Series A-arms, and they're really easy to install. The ball joints and everything just really, as you can see, they're just real easily attached. We'll get to those in a minute. Right now we're going to go ahead and install the shock to the lower A-arm. Okay. So now we're going to install these shocks to the A-arms. Okay, so as you can see, we have everything roughly in place. So what I'm going to do at this time is move my brake line back on the other side of the A-arm, on the back side of the shock where it should be, and try to route it in place properly. And I'm going to go ahead and get everything attached on the other side so that I can install the tires and let it sit on the ground. And then we can get our tie rods attached and start adjusting caster, camber, and toe in. So as you can see here, I have the tires back on it and it's sitting on the ground by itself. And as I was checking everything, one of the things that I was looking at was, as usual, the caster. I was looking at the relationship of the upper ball joint to the lower ball joint, and the angle on that is almost perfect. Whenever I installed these, I forgot to mention at the beginning, but I always start with my hind joints in as far as they will go. That way, if you need to adjust your caster or your camber or anything, you have room to do that with. But with these started all the way in, the relationship of the upper ball joint to the lower ball joint, which is the caster, is almost perfect. I don't even think I'm going to mess with that. I mean, that's about as good as you can get it. So as far as that goes, we're going to tighten everything down. But I did notice that the camber is out just a little bit. So I noticed that on the upper ball joint, there's still room here to do some adjustment, and I think that'll be just about the right amount to get it neutral, straight up and down. So what we're going to do, as you can see, this nut here is backed all the way off. I'm going to tighten up on this nut to pull the ball joint in, and at the same time that'll pull the top of the tire in. So give me a second to get set up and we'll do that. Okay, so that has our caster and our camber addressed. The next thing that's going to be to do is to adjust the toe in, which is the front tire in relation to the rear of the tire. Correct toe in, from what I understand, is 1/8 of an inch in on the front. So I'm going to get some pipe attached to the outside of the tire the same way I did the Raptor, and measure from the front, and measure the distance in between the pipes in the front and the rear. And like I said, you want the front to be 1/8 inch narrower than the rear. So let me get set up and we'll get that done. Okay, so we got her rolled outside, and I got my pipes hooked to the tires, and I've measured the distance between the inside of this pole and the inside of this pole on the front and the back. And the front is 1/8 of an inch narrower than the rear. So that's how you get your proper toe in, and you achieve that by adjusting your tie rods either in or out. And once you get them where you want them, you lock down these bolts right here on both ends of the tie rods on both sides of the four-wheeler, and that locks in your toe in. And that pretty much wraps it up, folks. Just a matter of checking over everything and making sure it's all tightened down. And once you get it tightened down, you can double check your measurements and you know, check your angles as far as your caster and camber and everything. But I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I hope it's been helpful to you. And we appreciate you watching. So we'll see you on the next one.